Welcome to the Fuel Podcast, where we explore the foundations under extraordinary lives.
The Fuel Podcast is sponsored by the Christopher Swartz team at First Choice Mortgage Advisors. NMLS ID 106583. If you're looking to purchase or refinance your mortgage, make the Christopher Swartz team at First Choice Mortgage your first choice.
And now, here is your host, Chris Swartz.
What's up, everyone? This is Chris Schwartz, your host of Fuel, and we are here today with our guest, Renee Rodriguez. Renee is considered by many as the leading authority on leadership and influence. Renee is a best-selling author, keynote speaker, leadership advisor, and transformational speaker coach. For the last 27 years, Renee has been researching and applying neuroscience to solve some of the toughest challenges in leadership, sales, and change. Renee, how are you, brother?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on here, Chris. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for taking the time. And, you know, one of the things I want to do before we dive into this, we were connected through a mutual friend. So Renee and I really haven't had a chance to unpack anything, but I thought something was really just powerful. And I wanted to share this. Our mutual friend, Ginger Bell, who connected us, she shared this with me. She said, the first time I met Renee, we were both speaking at a conference, and what was supposed to be a 30-minute chat ended up 4 hours. And I walked away with a different outlook on life. Every time I get a chance to sit down with him, I do, because Renee will change your life.
Wow.
I mean, that
Love Ginger.
Yeah, that right there, I think speaks volumes to what you do. And it honestly, it had me so pumped for this interview, Renee. So welcome to the Fuel Podcast.
I appreciate it. And the feeling's mutual with Ginger. So thank you.
Yeah. So Renee, as you know, and as we just talked about a little bit pre-show here, the Fuel Podcast is to help explore the foundations under extraordinary lives. And I know through everything that you do that you're living an extraordinary life. I've seen you on stage. Jen sent me all the content you put out there. I've seen you in front of some big audiences. I know you are doing some big things. So I wanted to unpack that today and talk about Renee and his journey to becoming, author, best-selling, author, I should say, speaker, influencer. I want to unpack that, Renee. So let's kind of dive in here.
I'm in. Which part, where do you want to start?
Yeah, you and I connected a little bit just briefly before we went on air here. And we talked about many moons ago, my journey in the mortgage business and where I connected with your content, in 2007, 2008, and you were at a different stage. And was more, I guess, in the mortgage space and in other areas. So as you transitioned to where you are today, we can talk a little bit about that transition, and then we'll go even further back to talk about some influencers in your life and your journey.
For sure. Yeah, you were actually there. I mean, if it was 2007, and I was actually not in mortgage until then. And so I first got involved in the mortgage industry in 2002. But I was, and always have been, and still the entire time in multiple different arenas and industries and, all of that sort of stuff. But I think that, a backdrop to the question, and I'll say this, because I want to have the conversation, but I also think it's important to state that, I don't feel like I've achieved anything. I don't feel like I've achieved things, but I don't feel like I'm any place, right? I just feel like I'm on a journey. And I think that that's a key thing to kind of hold on to, that, when I was there, when we met in 2007, I was like, wow, I had a big stage and that was fantastic. And you realize that all of these sort of milestones are oddly meaningless in the process. But what's really valuable are the things in between the milestones, because that's the only time we're really alive. The milestone comes and goes like that. But the journey is, you got to love the journey. And so that's sort of a backdrop that I want to give to this, kind of conversation, that I think that if you're listening to this, you're on a journey as well. And the question that I always tell people is, don't think about the place you want to get. Use that as fuel, huh? Right?
There we
I
go.
just need to think about that. Use it as the fuel and maybe the drive, but you better enjoy the ride, because once you get there, quote unquote, the proverbial there, it's not the same. It doesn't deliver like what we think.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
1,000%. I think many times in our lives, we focus on the proverbial there, right? Like we always have to get, especially as achievers and entrepreneurs and leaders, it's a gift and a curse for many, right? You're always trying to get to the there. And sometimes you miss everything along the way. And I've been guilty of that. It took me a lot of coaching, a lot of self-development, and meeting with great people and leaders to get me to experience the journey and the there, along the way, the moments. So makes perfect sense. And I appreciate you kind of setting the stage there.
And your brain is actually, working to create that. Because if you think about it, dopamine is the one thing that we pursue consciously or unconsciously. That's the reward. What we used to be known as the reward neurotransmitter. And dopamine is what you get from, achieving, what you get when taking drugs. It kind of gives it to you. Sometimes drinking and achieving a big goal and all of the things that are there. But when you look at the secretion of dopamine in the pursuit of a goal, dopamine's going way up. What's fascinating is that once you achieve the goal, dopamine drops off completely, almost completely.
Wow.
And so what's fascinating to that is that those that have healthy dopamine systems are very successful because they're rewarded for the pursuit of something. It's the anticipation of a reward that secretes dopamine, the anticipation. But once you achieve the reward, the goal, then all of a sudden it just drops. And so there's a statement that says those that are most capable of achieving and earning the beach home, right, the big home, are also the ones that are least capable of enjoying it. Because
I love that.
They put this effort in, and the moment they get to their beach house, they're like, wow, I did it. Yeah. And they open up their laptop and search for the next one. And that's haunted me, because I've always said you're only alive in the journey. You have to understand and love the journey. But now the science kind of proves that the reward, if you can't enjoy the journey, then you're going to hate life, because you're going to do all these things in promise and hopes of something else. And then people reach midlife and they're going, wait a minute, this extraordinary life you're talking about, it's about the time in between the milestones. Can you enjoy that? And the only way to do that, in my opinion, is purpose, having a purposeful journey.
Nice. So I think that's critical. And that is one of the things, as you say, purpose. Talk to me about, how did Renee realize and find his purpose? When did that happen? Well, let me back up. Was there ever a point where you were searching for the proverbial there and missing the purpose?
I'm always searching for the there. I mean, it's in human nature. I'm very goal driven. I'm extremely competitive. I've learned to hide it and temper it, but I am obnoxiously competitive in there's in everything. And so, but you just may not know it. And if I'm on a speaker panel, if you knew the things going through my head in terms of those things, or even just on a docket of speaking, but those are things that drive us, and I think that's okay. We just have to learn how to temper it and learn how to manage that in normal society. But then, the search, I think purpose adjusts, and to me, purpose is about, how do I align my skill with what I do? And purpose is also something that you look forward to. It's not something you look backwards on. That's more of a driver, what some might call the why. But the purpose is, where am I going with all of this? What's the end result that I'm trying to get? And what's fascinating when we talk about purpose is that purpose is also the alignment of values. If I can live a life that is in alignment, in congruency, and harmony with my values, I'm purposeful. And I think that the other piece too is, I don't think happiness is the goal either. I don't think happiness is the pursuit, because happiness is something that is that can be fleeting. It comes and goes. It touches on us, and we're lucky when it happens, but then it's gone quickly. And that doesn't mean that we're miserable or unhappy, right? Because I'm not happy all the time, but that doesn't mean that I'm sad either. They're not mutually exclusive to each other. And so, but that happy moment, like our book, Wall Street Journal bestseller, awesome, we got it. I was super happy. And then it was like, why weren't we number one instead of number two? And it's like, it was those kinds of things, or why did they use that headshot and that? And all of a sudden, it's like it was over. And I got just the last 2 months, I've got articles in sort of my dream article placements in Forbes, Fast Company, Chief Executive, and Inc. And I was like, man, I remember 20 some years ago, I was like, if I could ever get in there, life would be great. Well, you get in there and realize that life's no different. It's no different. But the reward came in the journey of getting there. And can you enjoy that? If you can enjoy that and you're living your purpose, meaning if you want to help people, then help people along the way to achieve something, and then you're happy. But happiness shouldn't be the goal because it's fleeting. But I do believe the purpose, our search should be towards utility, being useful and being of service and good to the world. And sometimes to be good for the world and of service to the world means sacrifice and suffering. But if you're suffering for the purpose of helping someone, you don't mind. If you want to take your shirt off and feel great at the beach, you suffer in the gym first and in the kitchen. Right? But if you want to look great at that presentation, that keynote, you're probably going to suffer in the practice for a while. If you're getting ready for a fight, you're going to suffer in the gym and practice until that fight comes so you can claim that victory. That's fleeting. But most of life is a suffering kind of a process. And suffering, I'm not talking about sobbing and everybody. It's difficult, and that's okay. It's okay that some of the stuff sucks. And I tell this to my kids. I said, here's your challenge. Are you willing to do the things that most are unwilling to do?
Love
and
that.
if you are, then soon will come a time that you're able to do things that others are unable to do.
I love that.
That's sort of the drive, and that's fun. If I'm willing to do, and David Goggins has made a whole brand around chasing suffering and chasing the pain, because most of life is that. And if you can learn to enjoy the pain and find growth in it, and growth is painful.
Sure, absolutely.
Any way you look at it. We have I partnered with a group, the co-founder of the Neuro Leadership Institute. He's also the head and CEO of a business school called Chimba in Italy. Partnered with the University of Iowa. And he has a bike, and that bike it's called the backwards bike, right? It's the opposite bike. So when you turn right on the bike, it goes left. And when you turn left, it goes right. I mean, it is a mind melt.
Wow.
And it is virtually impossible to ride because your brain is wired for the opposite. We forget how many things are involved in balance, right? And
sure, you just take it for granted.
We take it for granted. And imagine if every step we took was actually backwards and instead of going forward, it would just mess with you. So people can't ride this bike, and he bets them all the time. 1,000 euros, can you ride this? And they all fail.
That's awesome.
But then what's interesting is the frustration that goes over you. You're just so frustrated with trying to ride this thing. And after the max frustration, he goes and he flips a switch and it goes back to normal. And you watch the smiles, the laughter, the sense of relief, which in essence, the body is rewarding you for going back to an old way of behaving. And so the suffering is the growth. When you're in pain and you were frustrated and everything, you were growing. Your neurons were changing. You're experiencing new things. But your brain is not rewarding you for that. Your brain is rewarding you for not changing. And so for change, growth, getting better, improvement, living an elevated life, all of those things, an extraordinary life, it's going to require pain and suffering. And you have to reframe that for yourself. Maybe that's the purpose, and maybe that's okay.
Interesting. And what now your major focus, one of your major focus areas is the neuroscience, and you just kind of touched on it and the brain, and I think that's a lot deeper than a lot of people that are in your space go with, coaching and leadership and influence. How and I want to unpack that because it's very special. I mean, it's unique. And so, I mean, how did you get into that arena, so to speak? How did you find out these things and start to research the neuroscience behind how our brain works and why we're driven to make the decisions that we are?
Well, about how it would have been 28 years ago now. 28 years ago. Yeah, I did the math the other day. My mother asked me to look around a room, and she said, Renee, tell me what everybody here has in common. And I looked around, I was trying to figure it out, skin color, background, what they were wearing, what they were studying, and couldn't figure it out. She said, they all have a brain. And if you can understand how people's brain works, everything becomes easier. So that kind of inspired me to go to school for behavioral neuroscience. I loved psychology, but I wanted to understand the brain specifically. And when I sort of made that connection, I started realizing that I didn't have passion for the research. I had passion for the application. And how do I put the research into application? So looking at the applied science, and researchers were they were tenured for how many articles they could publish, and I'd be like behind them saying, no, let's pull that article off the shelf. And what does this mean to sales? What does this mean to leadership, communication, conflict resolution? What does it mean to you name it? And we started realizing that there's so many cool applications, and the value, I guess, what made me unique was I was able to bridge the gap between the science and its application to specific business problems.
And that, I think, is a huge differentiator for many people, that are out there. It's in my, limited experience with the two, it's almost like the two are, completely isolated. You have the research and everyone that has all the science, but then you have this, sales world and business world, and the two don't collide very often. And that's what I think is really intriguing about your approach to influence and leadership.
Well, you look at how technology is built. It's built on hardware. Hardware is a motherboard, bus, keyboard, mouse, screen, and that hardware functions through electrical engineering, ones and zeros, binary. It's a burst of electricity and not ones and zeros, 111 100 1110 1110, and it speaks a language. But I don't understand binary code.
Right.
So Steve Jobs and Bill Gates come along and they go, let's make something that speaks a little bit better. And they built operating systems, which, Windows and Mac at the time. So then you've got two operating systems that speak to hardware. But yet we don't speak to operating systems. Operating systems allow you to use a mouse and to click on things, but the value of the computer isn't in the operating system. The value of the computer for us is in its applications. That's why our phones, we have all these apps on our phone because we buy the app. The phone is a portal to an app. It's a platform that an app stands on. And even though, so neuroscience is the platform. The application is what people buy. And I think people need to understand the difference between a platform and an application in their business. Like what's the platform of their business? What's the platform of their understanding? What's the system, the model by which they work from? And then what does it mean to me? What's the application of all that? That's where the value is derived.
Interesting. And how can someone listening, how can they start to find out what the application is for them and to tap into some of these principles?
Well, I think that, sometimes an application is a philosophy. Sometimes applications are, if you're an accountant, your application, your foundation, is going to be general accounting principles would be that application, that would be your platform. And so then the application extension would be QuickBooks. If you're, let's say that, like you're a performance coach, then maybe your foundation for your platform might be mindfulness and diet and movement, so that then later on you can run faster, which would be an application. Maybe it's that you can have more energy throughout the day, that you're going to be stronger. And so there's a mindset component, which is the foundation and the platform that they choose to stand on. But what's the value of a strong mindset? Oh, I've got more energy throughout the day. I'm sharper in my presentation skills. I can close more deals. I'm much more value to my clients. I have more energy for my family after the workday. Those are applications, or, this is features and benefits conversation too, just in a different way.
Gotcha. So as you started to learn all this, how did it have an impact on your life? Speaking to you specifically, like once you started, did you discover this stuff and say, hey, let me try it, let me implement it and see where it gets? Or was it a journey of both things kind of happening at the same time?
It's a continual journey of learning, a continual journey of figuring it out, testing ideas. It's one of the reasons I love podcasts, because it forces you to articulate what you're thinking. And I'm always philosophizing about the stuff. I'm always asking myself tough questions and kind of questioning what I believe, and seeing if if my beliefs withstand, scrutiny. And I think that that's a really good thing. We have to, in this world, is sort of starting to shun scrutiny, but I think scrutiny is a good thing. We have to put ideas to the test of tough questions and to see what survives and what lasts. And if your idea doesn't last, then people take it personal. No, it's not personal. Maybe the idea wasn't strong. And but then how do we make the idea better? And then all of a sudden, some people throw the whole idea. No, maybe just a portion of it, or maybe you need to sit with it a little bit longer. But that's the beauty of experience and the wisdom that comes through time and experience in doing things, is you get a chance to learn what works and what doesn't work, and you create a humility around that, and realizing how often you were wrong about things, and how many assumptions that were just incorrect. And you start being much more inquisitive and curious, because there's probably a lot more that you don't know, and the curiosity is the value.
Sure. And one of the things, in watching one of your keynotes that I thought was extremely powerful was, we live in this world of social media. And if Chris wants to put out there something that he believes in and is passionate about, and then all of Chris's, supporters, family, friends, my inner circle start to comment on that, right? And say, hey, Chris, that's great. That's great. We get this false sense of, reality of, okay, everybody's agreeing with me. I must be right. But I think what you just touched on, which is what I took away from that snippet of the keynote that I watched, was how do we take the people that don't agree with Chris, that don't follow the same, path and journey as me? How do we convert them, in a way that is meaningful? And I think that was, when I watched that, I said that's the secret sauce, right? It's not about getting all my supporters to give me a high five. That.
Yeah, and I think I think that I think you're dead on, which is, it's easy to lead when times are good. It's easy to put a post on Facebook on what you believe and watch all your supporters run to your rescue, say you're awesome. And, you put your political beliefs up on Facebook, and you're going to offend, 50% of your audience, who then is going to hate you. And, but your other people are going to come run, but there's no influence that happens. And I think that influence is the ability real influence and leadership in that case would be the ability to spark an idea in the mind of the opposition. And so that they look at that and go, you know what, hold on a second. I never, ever thought about it that way. And if you get somebody to rethink something, that is powerful, because of what it took to get there. You had to have created so much trust and communicated so much value that you're making them question what they believe.
Right.
It means questioning their own reality. And that is so powerful and such a sacred skill set that I don't think people realize the power of that. Because that's what we all want, but sometimes we feel entitled to getting people to listen, and we're just not.
Yeah.
We're not entitled to that. We have to earn it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's, on a lower level, if you're not aware, you end up just, becoming defensive and argumentative. And when I listen to what you say, I'm like, there are very few people that can get people to question their own beliefs and change them. That is, that's like moving mountains to me, especially in a world of social media where you put whatever it is out there. Hey, Renee likes vanilla ice cream. You're going to have 50% of the people that said chocolate's the way to go. Renee, you're crazy, and it's like, if you can make that change, as opposed to just making it an argument or a confrontation, I think that is true influence and leadership. And that just that little snippet, Renee, was just such a mind shift and a really, for me saying, wow, that's influence, that's leadership. And that's why Renee's book is a bestseller, Amplify Your Influence, right? So this stuff all went into the book, right? These principles and philosophies.
Yeah, every one of them is in there. The book is designed to help people, whether if they can't come to the actual course, they can read the book and self-guide themselves through it. And the idea is explore their story, understand the applied science of influence and leadership, creating self-awareness, knowing what their origin stories are, learning how to manage and deal with stress, looking at how do we develop strong key messages, learning the secrets of influencers, which are things like tie downs, and then strategy in the conversation. And of course, all backed with the right brain research at the right time to kind of give a foundation to the topics and the concepts. But we wanted it to be a very interesting read where you couldn't put it down. And that's the big feedback we get is once I picked it up, I couldn't put it down, which we loved. And that was the goal. But we also wanted it to be a reference guide. And so we've spent a lot of time and energy and money on creating a very powerful index. And so you can search the book based on the index. And, if you want to learn about tie downs, you want to learn about self-awareness, you want to understand that piece, you can just go to self-awareness in the back, and then it'll tell you all the pages we talked about self-awareness.
Nice.
So
Okay.
It's really cool.
A little bit of new age cliff notes, huh?
Or no, it's like more like the old school Google.
Right.
Right. It's kind of a backwards thing. Here's what I want to learn. There's the page numbers, and it's just, the index was it's powerful. But yeah, so that's what the book was written about.
And for yourself, as you're up there on stage and you're doing these big keynotes, because let's just talk about, what are some of the audiences and the size of these keynotes? Because I've seen you on some big stages, man.
Anywhere from small groups of 10, which we do all the time, which are my Amplify courses. Those are more private events, to keynotes that are in the thousands.
Yeah.
So
and
it all depends.
And is that your true passion? Is it just being able to see all of the stuff that you do? Having a bestseller and knowing that you're making a difference, having these events, whether it's 10 or, thousands of people listening to you. How does it feel to know that you're making a difference? Because you are. If your book's a bestseller, if these people are showing up at these events, how does that feel to know that you're making a difference, Renee?
The gift of hearing someone's story and what they've been able to do with the information is the fulfillment of purpose. So it's hard to describe the feeling, but it's one that I will never take for granted, and one that, like a friend of mine he writes a Friday focus every week, and client of mine, and he wrote, I looked at it and I read it every week, and he talked about the book in it. And I was blown away. It's like
That's
okay,
awesome.
so there's something they found valuable. And so when you can feel like you add value to the world, which I think is what the purpose of influence is. The
Sure.
influence is about, I always look at the opposite of influence. You tell a joke, no one laughs. You sell a product, no one buys. You cast a vision, no one follows. You feel insignificant because you have no impact. But if you can tell a joke, people laugh. You sell a product, people buy. You cast a vision and people follow. Now you feel significant because you have an impact. And so the skill of influence helps people feel significant in the world. And another way of saying that is they can live their purpose. And part of the process is helping them find it first. It's hard to hit a target you can't see or haven't identified.
I love it. Yeah, absolutely. And that's, all of this stuff is just for me, as we talked about, prior to the show. It's just, I love it. How to, just take your life, your business, your relationship, whatever it is, to the next level, investing the time, the dollars, the hard work. And as you said, that just that sacrifice, man, the pain that goes through it. I really think you hit the nail on the head when you said, when you have to enjoy it and embrace that pain, right? Because so many of us, myself included, man, there's just times where you just, you're just grinding and you're working so hard and everything is just so hard.
Yeah.
things don't go your way, and you're just trying to get to that place where it's all going to be better, right? It's just going to feel okay. And, enjoying, embrace the suck, as they say,
Yep.
like that's powerful. So I hope that, people listening, that are trying to achieve great things and just make a difference and have influence can take away from this. Just enjoy the journey along the way.
Yep.
And really, as you and I sit here and rattle off dates and things, and it goes by so fast. You're like, wow, 2005, wait, 28 years ago on this. And, I have the two, beautiful daughters, and I'm about to blink and the one's going off to college. And I'm like, how did this happen? And
it's brutal.
Yeah, that's definitely a whole nother podcast, right? So, but it's just like, how did this happen? And there's a lot of time along the way where I can think, especially early on, where I was just so lost in the grind and the suck and the just getting it done, that I missed some things. And man, I look back and I'm so grateful that I connected with amazing people in my life that showed me how to live a balanced life and not go all in on just one area of life. And as we wrap up, Renee, I mean, how important, as we talk about these things, do you like work-life balance? Do you have a good work-life balance? Have you found that?
I don't think that's the goal either.
No.
Yeah, I don't think it's a goal. I don't think anything big has ever been accomplished with balance. Think of every goal that you've ever achieved, something big. Were you balanced in its pursuit? Sometimes we're out of balance to get there. But I think the goal can be harmony and integration. I can be unbalanced but yet harmonious. And you have an agreement with the people around you that maybe I got to work a little harder for the achievement of this. And they go, great, you do that, I'll do this. And we'll be a little unbalanced, but then you get there and you're like, okay. And so I think that's, how do I integrate the things in my life that give me purpose? And to be like, well, you actually worked 16 hours today. I'm like, well, hold on, were you awake 16 hours? Like, yeah. I said, so was I. I was doing something I loved. Nice. I don't feel any more tired, and sometimes I'm tired, but I think that's okay. Like to reach the end of your day and feel like you did something, a hard day's work, you rest really well. But the lazy days when you don't do anything, I don't know. I mean, that doesn't mean you can't take vacations. I'm not saying that.
Sure.
But I want to reach the end of the day knowing that I left it on the table. I want to get to the end of my workout exhausted, like I just gave it everything I had. It's why not? Why not approach life with that intensity? Because when you approach life with that intensity, you're gonna achieve more. You're gonna do bigger things. You're going to accomplish other things, and you're gonna set yourself apart from those that ho hum and just kind of, baby step their way through things. And not everybody wants to do that. But I'll tell you this, I don't know a human that doesn't want to reach their potential. It is part of our nature to reach our potential. And those that don't, I think, might be lying to themselves unintentionally, because I've never met a human when they did something really extraordinary that was upset about it.
Sure. Yeah, no, I mean,
maybe we just don't know what we're capable of. So balance is not my goal. Integration and harmony is.
I love that. That's a totally different perspective, that integration and harmony. I love it. And as you think of great things you achieved, you're right. It's, just sitting here in this moment, can't really think that, oh, I did this and I had this perfect balance. So awesome, man. This has been, so great. It's an honor to have you on the podcast. And we're going to wrap up with a couple of quick questions, because we want to make sure that people leave here with some actionable steps that they can take. So if I can hit you with a couple little rapid fire things on the spot here.
Please.
What is one thing that somebody is listening to this podcast right now? What's one simple thing that they can do to amplify their influence?
One thing that they can do to
besides buying the
expand their
book,
influence.
because we know that's the first thing.
Well, I think, self-awareness is everything to me. It was our first chapter. It's self-awareness. And the reason I start with self-awareness is because if you don't know where you start or where you're at, if you're a fidgety speaker, if like even through this presentation, I've had an itch on my nose, and it's driving me crazy because I know it's going to look horrible on video, but I've been trying to like itch this nose, because I got burned, on the tip. You saw that it was burned on the top of my head. But knowing those self-aware quirks, and so I think the way you build self-awareness is record yourself. So here's what I would do. Record a presentation. Let's say record 5 of them, but then watch it first in no volume. And what do you see? Do you see the quirks? Are you always fidgeting? Are you playing with a pen? Do you have a knee that's constantly twitching? Do you make funny faces? Are you digging in your ear? What are you doing? So you don't even hear the content. Then listen to it, watch it again, but just listen to the audio only. How does that sound? How's your voice? Your pacing? Do you keep my attention? Are you descriptive in painting pictures with your words, or are you just speeding through? What are all the things? And then lastly, transcribe it and take a yellow or red highlighter and highlight every crutch word, ums, ahs, likes, that doesn't add value to the sentence, where you should have pauses, and then visually look at that and say, you'll be shocked at just how many you do. And so I would start with recording yourself, because once you start recording yourself, at least what we call, you move from unconscious incompetence to now a conscious incompetence, where you didn't know that you sucked at something. Now I know I suck at it.
Yeah, it's almost like stepping on the scale, right? You don't know where you need to get to until you step on the scale, right? It's like,
yep.
So, Renee, thanks so much. And I got one last question. Again, we have Renee's book, Amplify Your Influence, bestseller. You pick it up on Amazon, everywhere that you can grab a book these days. Outside of your book, because we want everybody to pick that up, but outside of your book, one book that has had an impact on your life that you'd like to share with our listeners that they should pick up and read.
I always ask people for a category, or in terms of what they want to learn. And so I can do that, or I can just tell you one that comes to mind for me.
And
one that comes to mind to me is a book called Let's Get Real, or Let's Not Play. So a guy by the name of Mahan Khalsa, and he's a professor at Harvard, I believe, but he teaches how to sell high-end technology solutions. And as a consultant, high-end technology and consulting sales are very similar, but he teaches you the reality of higher ticket sales and the complex sales process in a way that helps you build value, but it builds a foundation of integrity through the process. It is the most transformative sales book I've ever read for myself, for sure.
Wow.
And I would listen to the audio as well, because read the book, but when you listen to him describe the book and the concepts, it's really, really fascinating. You're going to get annoyed with his voice at first. He talks like this, right? Okay. And no guessing. He talks like that, but then it starts to dawn on you how brilliant he is. Absolutely brilliant.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that. And that's a new one. I haven't heard of that. And definitely one of the things I love about the Fuel podcast is all of the nuggets that I selfishly get to take away as we share this with all the listeners. So Renee, thank you so much for taking the time to jump on the podcast. If people want to learn more, people want to connect with you, how can they find you? How can they connect with Renee?
Well, one for sure is follow me on Instagram on CRenee Speak. That is for sure. And then our website is meetrenee.com, MEET, Renee, RENE.com. And it'll have a little pop-up. I'd sign up for the newsletter. The newsletter is free. You get free videos and an influence tool every single week. And so we're putting some really cool stuff out there. And our YouTube channel, the podcast is free. You can go to the podcast. It's the neuro side of influence and leadership. All that stuff you can find on meetrenee.com. And for those that want to come and attend one of the courses, take a look at dates and see what works and what city works for you too. So we've got a lot of different ways that we can serve and help people.
Awesome. Well, Renee, thank you again. And thank you for everything you do, for being a leader, an influencer, and, really making a difference in the world. That's what we love to do here on Fuel, is to talk to the leaders and influencers And it has been an honor and a privilege to get to spend some time with you here today.
Honor's been mine. It's people like you that give us platforms to talk about this stuff. So the gratitude is all mine. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Renee. And for everyone listening, if you got something out of this today, do us a favor, share this on social, spread the word, get it out there. And if you're listening on iTunes, give us a 5-star rating on iTunes. And on that note, we're out.